Hi, thank you everybody for joining. We today are going to be talking about everything you need to know from I-9s to ICE. I hope you enjoy the presentation. My name is Danielle. I am an HR consultant for Paper Trails, and I am very passionate about helping small businesses build strong foundations through HR compliance. Oops, here we go. So, foreign national employees. So, we want to talk about some definitions and some key considerations. So, we want to start by saying what is a foreign national employee? And these are individuals employed in the US who are not US citizens or lawful permanent resident cards. So, they would hold a green card if they are a permanent resident. But these are individuals, again, who are not citizens and but are legal to work in the United States. They may hold a temporary visa or a permanent resident card or another immigration status. When they are here to work, they must present a valid work authorization card and a requirement to provide acceptable documentation to verify their work eligibility. So they will need to provide that before they start working. So what is the visa types that you want to take a look at? So your H-1B are your temporary workers. These are your specialty that holds a degree, a bachelor's degree or higher. Typically, these people are in the healthcare industry. These may be your nurses, your doctors, or they may be scientists or have some educational degrees, and they're here to work in those specific fields. Again, they must hold a bachelor's degree or higher. Your H-2A are your agricultural workers. Your H-2B are temporary non-agricultural workers, and we'll talk a little bit more about what those people do. And then your H-3 are your trainees, your special educational exchange visas. And then your H-4 are your dependents of the H visas. So more of the common types that you're going to see are the J1, and these are common for your local businesses. So these are educational and cultural exchange programs. These are your interns that are here, they're studying and they have temporary visas, and that they're doing some research or education. Your J2 is your dependents of your J1 holders. So again, the J1 is a very typical type of visa that you see. So when we compare the J1 visa to the H2B visa, we see that the J1s are here doing some cultural type of exchange. They typically work in the hospitality or educational healthcare industries. They are sponsored by the US Department of State and have designated sponsors. And they have a work authorization that is up to 18 months in most cases. Where your H2 visas are your visas, temporary non-agricultural workers. They typically work in landscape, food services, and construction. They are US employers and labor US employers with labor certifications are the sponsors. So your US employer would be the sponsor. And then they're typically here for a seasonal time frame, and that can be up to 9 months. So some tax considerations with the J1. So the J1 visa, they pay federal and state taxes, income taxes. They also will pay FICA, and employers must match the FICA taxes for the J1s. Employers also pay FUTA taxes and SUTA taxes on the J1s. Non-resident J1s, and this is the majority of the Maine businesses that deal with these visas, will pay federal taxes, state taxes when applicable, but they do not pay FICA, and employers do not match FICA, and employers do not pay SUTA or FUTA. So on the H-2A visas, employers are not required to withhold U.S. federal tax income. The H-2A workers do not pay FICA taxes. The employer does not match FICA taxes. And the wages paid to the employees are subject to FUTA and SUTA taxes unless the total wages paid from all the farm workers, including the 2A visa workers, is less than 20,000, which is highly unlikely. And then when we're talking about the H-2B visas, their federal and state income tax is what they would pay, including the FICA taxes. And employers must match the FICA taxes and H2 for the H-2B worker. Employers also pay FUTA and SUTA taxes on each of the H-2B workers. To summarize, the H-2B workers pay the same taxes as U.S. residents, but they can't collect the same benefits that we do as residents. So when we're talking about HR considerations when it comes to hiring foreign workers, you make sure that you have an up-to-date I-9 form. This is your employee eligibility verification form. You also want them to fill out a W-4 form, as well as provide copies of the visa documents, which is your DS-219 for the J-1s or the H-2B's approval notices. So they'll have some documentation, obviously, that to provide to you. All employees will have Social Security numbers. When foreign workers get here on day one, they have to apply for a Social Security card. So they will have a Social Security card to provide to you. Certain visas may require employers to pay housing and transportation for workers. So it's important to create policies in your handbook surrounding those benefits for those workers. Your employee handbook and your HR policy should be clearly addressing some of the following areas. And these areas are outlining foreign worker visas, like your J-1s and your J-2Bs. And they should also apply, you should have all your employees apply the code of conduct, the anti-harassment, and the workplace safety policies equally, whether it's your employees or whether it's foreign nationals or foreign workers. You want to make sure that you are being fair, concise, and consistent when you are applying your handbook policies to all of your workers. Confirm all foreign employees receive written notification about their job duties, their pay rates, and their working hours. And that would be basically your job description. You give them a copy of their job description, and that will cover the job duties. They'll know what to do. And then, of course, your offer letter would cover the pay rates and the working hours. So make sure you're very clear when it comes to providing the documentation on what they'll be doing, how they'll be paid, and the hours that they will be working. Be sure to provide information to the foreign workers and follow specific state laws, such as your paid family Maine leave and your Maine earned paid leave laws. So when it comes to your I-9 process and establishing employment eligibility, be sure you're using the most current I-9 form. A lot of times your timing does matter when it comes to the I-9 forms. A lot of times, and I've heard it over throughout my career, is that you have 3 days to complete the form. That is incorrect. Your employees must fill out the form on day one of their employment. And then the employer has 3 business days to fill out the form. So if you're open on weekends and you hire someone on Friday, Saturday and Sunday are considered your business days. So again, 3 business days for the employer to fill out the form. Your employee must fill out the form on day one. Re-verify your work authorization only when necessary. So if you know of your employees' visas that are expiring, make sure they're filling out new forms and providing new documentation or providing new forms of work authorization. And all employees, this applies to all employees who work in the US. So again, make sure that you're filling out those I-9s. If there's expired documentation, make sure you're getting the proper documentation or new documentation that it's not expired. And then make sure you store all of these I-9 forms in a separate protected, a separate folder or a separate binder. I recommend a separate binder. Do not store these in your employee folders or your employee personnel records. They should be put in binders and they should be kept locked because it does it does, how do I want to say this? Sorry, I'm at a standstill here. It provides personal information like their social security card, their social security numbers, and their dates of birth. So consider using E-Verify when you are processing your I-9 forms. E-Verify, if you don't know, it's an internet-based system that's operated by the federal government, and it determines employee eligibility to work in the United States. It's a rather quick process. You put the information in, and it will say if they're authorized or not. E-verification is not universal for all employers unless those employers have federal contracts. Some of them have state or local jurisdiction that have similar requirements or contracts with public agencies, quasi-municipalities, or government contracts. And then some states even require private employers to use the E-Verify. So check with your state, check to see if your industry is one that requires to use E-Verify. Again, if you're holding government contracts, you want to check to make sure to see if it requires you to use E-Verify as well. On the I-9 compliance, again, this is just a reminder that to use the most current I-9 form, have the employee fill out Section 1 on their first day. Employers do fill out Section 2 within 3 business days and make sure that the employee is providing all of the documentation before they start work. And then ensure that all fields on the form are completed. Do not leave any forms blank. Leaving forms blank or leaving boxes blank tells the auditor that maybe it was overlooked. So recommendation would be that you put like an NA or a dash to show that the box was reviewed, but you had no entry for it. So you'll again put NA or a dash. Never write notes or make comments directly on the I-9 form. If you need to make comments, then use a sticky and stick it or staple it to the form, but never write on the I-9 form itself. And then use blue or black ink when completing the I-9 by hand. I also recommend that employees sign by hand the I-9 forms and not electronic. So right now, it is highly recommended that you conduct an I-9 audit, go through your I-9s and take a look at every form and then organize your forms properly. Use 2 separate binders, one for current employees and one for terminated employees. So how long do we keep I-9 forms? The retention rule is we keep I-9 forms for 3 years after the date of hire or 1 year after the termination date, whichever is later. So for example, if you have an employee who worked for 9 months, you would keep his I-9 form for 3 years after the date of hire. However, if you had an employee who's worked for you for 10 years and then terms, you would keep their I-9 form for 1 year after the termination date. So cross-check with your payroll to ensure that your employees have the proper I-9 completed forms corresponding with your payroll, and then investigate any discrepancies. So if you find any discrepancies, immediately either fill out a new I-9 form and document why you filled out the I-9 form. Or if you choose to make a correction on the form itself, then document, again, not on the I-9 itself, but attach a note to it as to why you documented or made the changes. So some of the best practices for immigration compliance is to hire only authorized workers, accurately complete the I-9, and then update and maintain your employee handbooks with immigration policies. Really, I want to stop here for a second and say, make sure you definitely have all of the I-9 documentation and verification before they start work. It's actually illegal to pay someone who who does not have the documented forms to start. So again, accurately do your I-9 forms, but make sure you have the correct forms of ID and employee and then working eligibility to make sure that they are eligible to work, because otherwise it's illegal to pay them. Update any handbooks, like I said earlier, update those handbooks with some immigration policies, require employees to sign immigration compliance statuses. Basically, that's basically saying, I'm going to give you any updates. If my visa expires, I'll provide new ones, a new authorization form or new visas should I need to. And, I'll be very transparent with my employer. So I do recommend that you have an immigration compliance statement that employees sign. And then consider using E-Verify as a layer of protection for your immigration workers. Implement anti-discrimination policies in the workplace is also important, and make sure they're applied for every employee. So what happens if ICE decides to audit you? Typically, ICE will provide some sort of notice to you. They should provide you a 3-day inspection or a 3-day notice of inspection. But if ICE auditors do show up at your business and you weren't expecting them, ask for credentials. But even if you were expecting them, definitely ask for credentials and ask for a copy of their written notice or their warrant. Stay calm and just cooperate. I would not argue or resist what they're asking. They are the law. Have a script ready for your frontline staff. Have them say, I'm not the right person that you need to speak with, but let me contact somebody immediately. Let me get you the right person, and then call the owner, the HR manager, whoever that person would be. If it's a subpoena or a warrant, you may be obligated to comply immediately. So, the best advice is to consult legal counsel. Chances are, when you pick up the phone, you won't be able to talk to them right then and there, but definitely leave them a message. Document everything. So, if they ask for documents, make a note of what they're asking for and make a note of what you're providing to them. Make and keep copies of any documents that they want to take. I would not give them the originals. I would give them copies. However, if they insist on the originals, then make sure you keep the copies. And then write down their name and their badge number and any contact information you may have on them. So if you have questions or if something comes into play, you have a contact to talk to. So if they find errors, penalties and fines can be extensive. So knowingly hiring and continuing to employ unauthorized workers can cost a lot of money. And I'm not going to go through all of these fines, But you can kind of see the first offense is close to $6,000, up to $6,000 for unauthorized workers. The second offense, the second fine, is up to close to $14,000 for unauthorized workers. Again, if they find repeated offenses, then you could be paying 27, almost $28,000 for unauthorized workers. For just the I-9 violations, if they find errors on your I-9 forms and they're not properly filled out or they're not properly retained or the I-9s aren't available for inspection, you could be paying up to $2,700 per violation. And that would be per I-9. That could be per I-9 form, or it could be per error. Document fraud, the first offense, if they find fraud, is up to $3,200 per document. And then again, if they continue to find more offenses, then you could pay up to $6,500 per document. So the fines can be extensive and they're very, it can really impact an organization. The other thing I wanted to discuss is what happens if they want to talk to an employee and takes an employee away. My recommendation would be to get the employee and allow them to have conversations with the employee. And if they take the employee away, I wouldn't resist. Again, they are holding up the law. And what I would do would be obviously call your attorney, but then think about the employees that are impacted. A lot of your employees are going to be scared. A lot of employees will wonder, who's next. A lot of employees might not come to work. So if this happens, I would immediately huddle your employees and have conversations and try to encourage them not to be scared, or encourage them that you're working and cooperating with ICE and that you'll do what you can to help them during that process. So think about, should ICE happen to come in and take an employee, think about, yes, it's traumatic going through that process. It's traumatic for that employee, but it's also traumatic for the rest of the employees around, and they're instantly scared and in shock. So really just kind of address that with them. So how can we help? Well, we can provide expert guidance. We can talk with you. We can answer some of your questions, and we can guide you through the processes of the I-9 and immigration compliance. We can help you update your employee handbooks. We'll review your handbooks. We'll include clear, up-to-date immigration policies and employment eligibility policies. We'll help you audit your I-9s if you'd like us to do that, but we're here to help. And then in addition to that, we also use iSolve, which is our software. And the great thing about iSolve is that it is a place to put if your I-9s are expiring. So you'll get notification when I-9 forms are expiring. So you'll stay on track every single time as long as you're putting the information in to the system. And that kind of concludes our presentation today, but I wanted to let you know that we have seasonal cards here to help. We'll also have this presentation on YouTube tomorrow, and then we'll have some upcoming webinars coming up. Our next webinar is June 17th at 2 p.m., and that's ISOL reporting. And we'll also have an extensive immigration tax presentation in October. The seasonal workers help card here is a really cool card, but it's not clicking, so I won't be able to show it to you. But they are available when you get this. If you look at this presentation tomorrow and you click on the link, it will pop up, and it's really about the visas, the visa form, the visa cards, and the differences between the visa types. So with that being said, we're happy to take any questions that you may have. And so we'll just give it a minute. So if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and then we can get back with you or hopefully answer your questions. And the question is, what do you do if I-9, what do you do? I'm sorry. What do you do if you do an I-9 audit and they find that the information is missing? That's a good question. What, so the information, if they're missing, you probably will get a fine for that. But I would recommend that you go and you collect and revise it, um, revise the I-9 form, get the documentation that you need, and then have it for next time. And then again, go ahead and audit your I-9. That's audit your I-9 forms and make sure that you have all of that information readily available. So the next time that they come back or then when they come to conclude the audit with you, you can show them that you've rectified the problem. Thank you for that question. I don't see any more questions. So again, thank you for attending and, feel free to reach out. Our information is up there. Ask to speak to the HR consultant. And we would be happy to answer any additional questions that you may have. If you think of some tomorrow, please feel free to give us a call. We're here to help. Thank you.